All right, the property prequel, be in the know before you buy. I'm not with my boy Crossy today. He's taken sick leave, so shout out to Crossy. I'm running this one solo, but I just wanted to give a quick shout out to everyone who's left the review or left some messages for me regarding Kelly Davis. We had her from Kelly Howard Co. On the previous podcast. Her house is up on the market as well. You got to check it out. It's Baja House, I think it is. But check out her Instagram, Kelly Howard Co. You'll see her designs on there. But she gave an absolute masterclass on what it takes to, I guess, succeed in business, especially motherhood, marriage and balancing all of that with her holistic ways. It was so cool to see her entrepreneurship journey just skyrocket, and then her design tips as well, interior design. So check that one out if you haven't had a listen. And to everyone, today's a really special one. I'm really keen to dive into this topic today. We've got Adam Grbcic. I always nervous when I pronounce his last name, but hopefully I've got that right. I'll check with him in a sec. But Adam's one of the best commercial agents, in my opinion, in the sort of southeast Queensland region, northern New South Wales. He's done a lot. He's been around. He's very experienced. But we're going to touch on his journey to, I guess, high performance success in this industry, and also touch on, I guess, the mental health aspect, the burnout. He's a fit guy, and I'm really keen to dive deep on a few key takeaways that he translates into his business. So, Adam Grbcic, mate, did I get that right?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, got it. Mate, thanks for popping on.
No, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me. I am a long-time listener, actually, so this is exciting.
Awesome, man. And I guess the first Grbcic, I said it's Serbian or
Croatian.
Croatian.
Yeah.
Okay, full?
Half-half.
Okay.
Half Croatian, half Pommy.
Oh, okay.
But I actually was born in South Africa, so I'm like my dad says I'm a Mongol.
I was going to say, very mixed breed.
Yeah.
Okay, there you go. Mate, I kid you not, I always take note of this, and this isn't a blanket thing, but people who, I'm assuming, were you born in Australia or born in South Africa? Or?
Yeah, I was born in South Africa, first 10 years.
And what about your parents?
Dad was born in Zambia, actually. His parents were refugees from Croatia during the war, and then my mum's full-blown English.
Yeah, no, the only reason I asked, it's always as I said, not always, but a key thing I always look for is like when someone's had parents who have come from their immigrants, or they migrated from somewhere. I just find that when it translates into their kids, I don't know, a lot of successful people we've had on the podcast have had some sort of immigrant background or from another country, and I guess it might be just the way that they were brought up. Kind of thing. I
think it's the big one is you've got no choice but to succeed when you make the jump from a life in South Africa, arriving with a suitcase in Australia and starting from scratch. You've got no option but to make it work. Yeah, 'cause you can't go back.
Yeah, I remember we had the Graya lads on, the lads from Graya, and they're South African background, and they were giving us a little insight off air on like their parents' upbringing, and just very disciplined, very driven. And it sort of instilled into them, and you look at their success now. So I can see where part of your success comes from. So take us back. So you're born in South Africa. Did you go to school and everything over there?
Yeah, till I was 10.
Okay.
And then obviously it takes a while to get approval to move to Australia. So once we got the green light, we, essentially had about 30 days notice and just packed everything up and left. And my old man started in real estate from scratch. Yeah.
Yeah, really.
He's been in real estate for, I was going to show his age, but 40 years.
I've seen his name. Yeah.
So he left a company with over 30 staff, successful residential agency in South Africa, and just started from scratch in Australia.
Really? So he was in real estate back in South Africa?
His whole life, yeah.
Wow. Was the landscape different over there in terms of the way they doing deals in South Africa, or? Yeah,
South Africa's it's a beautiful country, but it's still a developing nation. It's very, the gap between rich and poor in South Africa is probably one of the biggest gaps that you'll see. So, yeah, it's completely different.
Yeah, okay. And he's come over here, and then what was the purpose? Just a better life, or?
All about the kids, yeah. All about opportunities for us. He didn't think that South Africa had a long-term opportunity for us, and the reality is most kids, or most people I went to school with, have moved overseas and left their parents in South Africa, and he wanted to make sure that we kept the family unit together.
Unreal. And so what age were you when you come over?
10.
10.
Yeah.
And where'd you grow up? Like what school? And
I went to Somerset.
I see you
Gold
GC.
Coast. Yeah, straight to Gold Coast. Haven't left. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. Because a lot of the people we get on the show, and this is the Gold Coast, I'm sure you testify this, a lot of people actually aren't from here. Like they all come into the coast and then they stay here. But it sounds like you've been here early days. So you went to Somerset, graduated there.
Yeah, went to finished Somerset, went to Bond University to study property development and valuation, with no real intent to get into real estate, but the cards fell that way after a couple of years in valuation.
Yeah,
so I did valuation for 2 years post graduating.
Yeah, okay. As in, like, worked in a valuer's office?
Landmark White's not around anymore, but I was doing commercial valuation at Landmark White on the Gold Coast.
Okay.
And that's really how I got the foundations for commercial real estate, because I was lucky enough to work as an assistant for everyone in the office. So
Yes.
the childcare specialist, I worked with them. The development site specialist, I worked with them. The general commercial and retail guys, I did the research for them. So it was a very good opportunity for me. Not that I intended to come to real estate, but having that foundation.
To sort of move into it. And then what was the sort of, that light bulb moment when you're like, all right, real estate, that sales environment, like when did that all click in and where did it come from?
I think it was after being in, it would be no disrespect to the industry, but realising that it didn't really matter how hard you worked, you were capped to a certain extent. And that's not, I didn't see it as an industry where I would start my own company and build all the resources and foundations, because it is such a big machine, a valuation company.
Yeah.
And so I just thought, the harder you work, you're not necessarily rewarded for the work. And so, yeah, I think it was a light bulb that I thought I need to be in an industry where you're rewarded directly in correlation to how much work you put in.
Yeah, okay, yeah. And that probably, when you're looking at your child, he's probably got that ingrained in you, that kind of... I'm taking it you're a competitive guy. I don't know why. You competitive?
Yeah, I think I would say
you play
that,
sport or anything?
I used to play a lot of sport.
Okay.
Yes, mainly soccer, but now just work.
Yeah.
Still a competition, though.
I was going to say the sport of business. It's probably the hardest sport I've played, I can tell you. And then, so you've come into, what age were you when you made that leap into commercial real estate then?
Probably 22 to 23.
Okay. So pretty young, and especially as a commercial agent.
Yeah, that was a challenge, but again, I think that I didn't rush to become a commercial sales agent. I took my time in the disciplines that I was confident in, and I think that's probably a major thing, is not expecting to sell million, 10 million, $20 million properties straight away without earning your stripes, I would say. So I did leasing for 3 or 4 years, built the relationships, and then I became sales, and organically grew from there. So it was really probably a 10-year journey to this point.
Wow.
And yeah, you have to start there, in my opinion.
Yeah. Mate, I just want to touch on that quickly, because I was actually just having a chat to a guy on the phone literally just before he's referred me a buyer from interstate to work with. Anyways, he's quite fresh in the industry, I'd say 3 months as a real estate sales agent. And we were just sort of talking, and he was sort of mentioning around, the listings and this and that. And I sort of, because from my experience, I was like, mate, main thing is you just ticking doing the habits and learning as much as like having that mindset that nothing is going to come in the first 6-12 months. Just try to absorb as much learning as you can from your experience, right? Because that's a good way of looking at it. What's your advice to anyone jumping into either commercial or sales, like real estate, and they're expecting results straight away? What would you say the mindset should be?
Well, I think there are probably two answers. I think the mindset should be to be make sure that you're confident in what you're providing that particular client. So that fake it till you make it is not, I don't think is the right thing to do in real estate. I think you really need to become really good at one thing and stick to it and just grow organically. I think that you always ask yourself the question, what is, how do I act in the best interest of my vendor? So if you do get an amazing opportunity, it's very easy to think of the commission. It's your first $1 million, $2 million listing. I'm going to do it. I'm going to take it. I can do this. It's, if you're not confident, you can still hold that relationship, but bring someone else experienced in to make sure you do it right.
Yeah.
Because you only get one chance a lot of these times with that particular client. And in commercial, one person owns multiple properties.
Yeah.
And I think they'd respect that. So, yeah, you might have to forfeit half the commission.
Yeah.
But I did that for my first few opportunities.
Yeah.
I pulled in other agents that had those stripes on their belt to ensure that we service the client. So it's always what's in the best interest of the client.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. And leaning on someone who's a little bit further than you to ensure you're getting the job done.
I mean, commercials, even more so. I think residential, the skill set is obviously there's a big skill set in residential. You've got to learn and grow a lot as well. But in commercial, you might have sold a lot of properties at a certain price, but we've got different asset classes. So you might get your first development site, and if you've done a whole lot of industrial, that's a new discipline. That's something that you need to learn again. And then you've got specialised assets. You've got a childcare centre. If you haven't done one of those before, are you the best person for the job? Like, don't lose the business, but bring someone in to make sure that you know what you're talking about, because you'll become unstuck.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. What's your biggest tip then for, I guess, people? Because I get this one a lot. Like, people in resi want to make the jump to commercial.
Yeah.
What do you think your biggest? I don't know. Just say I'm like, Adam, mate, I want to jump into commercial, raw. Like, I've got resi background. What do you think the biggest transition would be to focus on?
I think I'd probably ask them why, and 90% of the time they'll say, I want my weekends back.
Yeah.
And that's a misperception, because I work every Saturday and most Sundays anyway. So find out the reason. Yeah, find out why. But the biggest tip I would give is to work in a team.
Yeah.
Don't try and do it
alone.
yourself, because it's I'm not trying to portray that commercial is the most difficult thing in the world, but it is.
There's a lot more intricacies.
There is,
yeah.
and there's so many steps.
Yes.
And so I think that your journey to be a commercial agent would be longer than that. A successful, high-performing agent would be way longer than that of a residential. I think the residential, if you're good at building relationships, you're always doing the right thing. You can organically grow with. You organically grow, but there's not always that need of extra knowledge and extra learning that commercial agency's got. Great tip.
And what about, okay, so you've got some stripes on the belt now. You've learnt off a few on the commercial side. When did your career really start to take off? Like, what age were you?
I think so. I'm 33 now. Probably when I was 29, 30.
Yeah.
I started to get some good opportunities.
So that's just a quick one. That's a really good point. So from 20, you started what, 22? 23 was it? Did you say? Yeah. So that's nearly a decade before it. And that's a really good key takeaway there. Like, someone who's in your shoes now, seeing the success you have in that space. That's a, as you said, you're willing to put in the work for a good decade, like mastering the craft, getting the stripes on the belt. So I just thought that was a really good takeaway you just said then. So, yeah, you're coming up to sort of year 8, 9, 10 in the industry now, starting to find your feet. What's sort of the career path then? Because you're at Ray White, weren't you at first? Yeah.
Yeah, Ray White commercial for 5 or 6 years leading into my Koloshi, joining Koloshi. And I think that, a lot of the opportunities came from my very early on experience where I was doing the leasing, and then it's a low fee, high volume business model when you're a leasing agent. So I built the trust and relationships through the clients doing the leasing and constantly giving them advice on, once I'd leased it, how do you reposition your asset? And I took that valuation experience into just trying to become an information source rather than ask for business.
Yes.
And in commercial, that your journey of owning a property, or the average property, is owned for 3 or 4 times longer than residential, because an investment property serves a purpose in perpetuity.
Yes.
Whereas a residential property, when it's owner occupied, circumstances change, kids leave, they come, and so you're needing to turn over your residential property a lot more frequently. So commercial, a lot of my relationships developed early but came to fruition after the 10-year mark. Yeah,
interesting. So that's a really, really good point. So sort of, it sounds like your mindset from the start was you're playing the long game. playing the long game?
Yeah, I think it just almost happened organically. But I didn't rush to be an agent that, last year we sold 5 properties over 20 million.
Yeah.
I certainly didn't chase that for the first
Early
5
days,
years.
yeah.
I was looking for probably sub $1 million, and make sure that I built my resume up before I went for 2, 3, 4 million, 5 million, and then you sort of reach a bracket where you're good at all disciplines in commercial.
And then the key, I guess, overarching thing, what I'm hearing is the relationships. I feel nearly as important in commercial, like the relationship with the people you're leasing and vendor, because you're right. I know a few guys who are doing, and girls in the commercial space, mate, they own a few. So it seems as though when you get that relationship locked in, they keep coming back. Is that right?
Yeah, and there's they do keep coming back, and we call it it's more a trusted advisor, becoming their trusted advisor. The town plan's changing, how that's going to impact me. I've got this issue. How do you think I can approach it? And you're able to help a lot of these people bounce ideas off you on how to value add their property, and so you don't get paid for a lot of the relationship work you do. One instance for self-managed super funds, updating appraisals, and it's a lot of work, and you do that for someone for 5 or 6 years. You sort of solidify the relationship without asking for business. We never ask for business.
Yeah, it comes in more inbound from the trust and relationships you built.
Yeah.
That's a really good tip. Just one of our values at our company is build relationships, not transactions.
Yeah.
And I just think in this industry, I don't know whether it's just the media or what they see on social media. It seems like a lot of people see the transaction side.
Yeah.
And it gets, and that's why a lot of people come into this industry, and you can tell straight away they're probably not going to make it in this industry when you focus on that. So I don't know how you feel, but the relationship it's key. And sometimes it's just adding value, not asking for business. It's adding value and building trust and rapport.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, all right, so you've just I really want to touch on the commercial side, because it's still something I love, but still so many intricacies, I do a bit of invest in my personal life, and I want to diversify my portfolio with a few commercials. So really topical, cash flow has been impacted for some investors in the current climate. Obviously, interest rates are at all-time highs.
Yeah.
I'm seeing a few more people now diversify into the commercial space to, with a bit better yield percentage there. Give us a quick rundown, I guess, what you're noticing from your side, why people move from resi maybe to commercial.
Yeah, I think the main one you've already mentioned is for cash flow. In certain asset classes you can buy for capital growth, but generally in commercial, either which way, you've got a capital gains issue when you sell. So capital growth is not necessarily your friend.
True.
In commercial, but it's
True.
The cash flow. But I think that because there is this new transition of people wanting to go into commercial property.
Yeah.
A lot of people are looking for opportunities based on a quick fact sheet of what they're looking for. So they've got 3 or 4 key requirements, and I think that's where over the next 12, 24 months, I wouldn't say lack of knowledge is probably the wrong word, but not understanding the foundations of commercial is where a lot of the investors might become unstuck.
Yeah.
So, I'll give you an example. It's when you get a phone call from a buyer, I want 6 or 7% return, and I want a 5-year lease, and that is their 2 main requirements on face value.
Yeah.
They can get that, but it might be, Adam's secondhand antique shops, which is got the 5-year lease, the correct return, without taking a deep dive into your 5, 10, 15-year plan with the asset. A lot of people don't even check whether or not the tenant is paying their rent. Have they paid full rent?
Interesting.
And so as you break it down, is he paying his rent, but is it an inflated rent? So in 5 years' time, when it assesses, does your 7% become 4%?
Yeah, true.
And so there's just so many, there's so many steps to the due diligence, and a lot of people look at it at face value. And on day one, you're getting everything you wanted, but after 6, 12, 18 months, all of a sudden your asset or your positions change drastically because, tenant doesn't have longevity.
Yes.
The property needed work that you didn't identify.
Yes.
Sometimes people buy properties with tenants that aren't even trading lawfully and become unstuck. So it's I think it's really important. It's something we do when we sell every commercial property is we ensure we provide every possible piece of due diligence that someone would need. And our job compared to a residential agent is not to sell based on emotion. I think it's the ability to make someone pay more if they really want something is a lot easier in residential. To make someone pay more or not make them, but encourage them to pay more is to show them what their 5, 10 and 15-year plan would look like. Yes, this property's only got 12 months to run on its lease.
Yes.
However, in 12 months, the market rent should be X. You know, you have the ability to then split your tenancy and you can get 2 tenants and you are showing the long-term picture. And they may be prepared to then buy it at a sharper yield. So when yields are reported, I would just disregard them completely because the logic behind the purchase is so important to understand why things are selling for 4% in Burleigh. 4% cap rates. That's not a blanket rule for the whole of Burleigh. You know, and I'm using it as a case study around the corner. It was it was 4% because the purchaser had purchased it in the view to strata title the building and sell them off individually, and income meant nothing. And so I think that's where the newspapers can be very dangerous when they start reporting returns. Because every sale is different.
And then that's it, macro level versus micro level as well, right? And I'm just thinking even there, like I'm thinking if I wanted to become a commercial agent, I'd have to really, I'm really big on understanding green brain versus red brain. And anyone hasn't done I love like sales psychology and all those things and human psych, and been doing a lot on the red brain, green brain, like green brain emotion, using dialogue around, family, home and wanting to help people in that emotion, get them in that emotional state. It seems like I feel if I was a commercial agent, I'd really dive into red brain sort of key facts. It sounds like a lot of your buyers would want the key details, want the logical answer, want the due diligence that they're making. They're putting their money to work and it's going to do X amount and it's all factual. And would I be right in saying that?
I think you're 100% right. And a lot of the time people don't actually know that's what they're looking for, which is why how you present it is so important, because they're going to read through your information at memorandum once and they're going to make a decision whether they're interested or not at that moment. So spelling out all of those opportunities and forecasts is so important. And, our due diligence drive is probably overkill, but it just there's no opportunity for loopholes or uncertainty or what are they hiding. It's very transparent.
Adam, what would be the 3 biggest mistakes you see commercial buyers make?
That would be the main one, would be purchasing on face value rather than that micro analysis of a property. I think that the other ones would probably be not having a long-term plan. So purchasing something with a short-term view rather than a long-term view. Because, as I said, you've got a capital gains issue no matter what. So buy with the intent to hold forever, essentially.
For a long time,
and then, maybe forgetting about their property. A lot of times people have owned it for 5 or 10 years and they've missed that opportunity to value add through the process. Leases expire and then you're just taking any tenants. You become complacent with the asset. Whereas a vacancy in a property is an opportunity, not a hindrance. It's an opportunity to make sure that you can readjust your tenancy mix. You can reposition your asset, get the income up. You can potentially create more. There's so many opportunities when you get a vacancy that it's actually an opportunity and people see it as a negative. Great answers, mate. This is probably a selfish one. I'm just thinking now, like in my resi portfolio, I'm always looking at ways to add value, and one of my favourites is either it's got to have a bit of X factor, whether I can build a secondary dwelling or cosmetic reno like fans, carpets to boost the cash flow or rent. With commercial, it sounds like there's a few other variables where you can add some value, and it seems like the lease plays a big part in it. Or just give us a quick, and I said this is a bit of a selfish because I'm curious, like what's some ways you can add value with a commercial? Just say I got a commercial asset. What's some ways I could add some value to that asset, you think, outside of capital? Obviously, so we touched on the the income side by when you
Yes.
get the opportunity to look at how you can reposition and increase your income. But
As in the leases side of things?
yeah,
Yep.
because what you need to understand is that every business, there's an affordability factor in every single business, and so identifying what businesses have the ability to pay more rent as well. You don't want to charge.
True. Like industry
If someone really wants a property and they take the leap, but the rent becomes unaffordable, you're not going to have them for the long term. So you've really got to understand about the business that's going into your property. We've got a client that does cash flow analysis on the business's income projection and helps them helps them make the steps to make sure that they're successful. And I think I digress from your question, but your major value add opportunities is changing the use. So if you buy a property, let's just use Ashmore Road. It's not the best example because it's saturated in doing this, but Ashmore Road, you've bought a property. It's a real estate office. Their lease is 10 years coming up. Start an application to change it to medical. All of a sudden, you've got the opportunity to charge not only at medical rates, which are higher, but you've attracting a tenant, which is essentially recession-proof.
Yeah, I was going to say longer term. Yes,
yeah,
true.
So you sort of changing the use and changing the zoning of a property is probably your biggest opportunity.
Wow.
And yeah, there's a cost factor, but you can directly correlate the return.
Just on that quickly, because I didn't even think of that. How do you go through that process just quickly? So just say you've got an industrial or some sort and you want to get a different use for it. Is it a case of do you have to go to like council and check if you can do that first? Or
yeah, you've sort of got three levels. You've got as of right, which means what you're doing, you can just do it.
Yep.
You've got a code accessible application,
Yes.
which means within these requirements, you will be permitted to do something. And then you've got your impact accessible, which is where the biggest value will be, where you're changing the use to something the council is not recognised as a permissible use. And that is a application process anywhere from 2 to 6 months, depending on what you're doing. And then your approval time could be anywhere from 6 to 12 months just to get the approval.
Gotcha.
So it's a timely journey or experience, but it's the reward is huge.
Huge. And if you're looking at, and I guess it goes back to commercial assets, you should be playing more of the macro long game, looking at it as not a quick flip or anything like that. It's you're there to hold it.
Yeah, and the foresight, right? Because if you know it's going to take you 12 to 18 months, don't wait until your property's got no income to do it. It's that pre-planning.
Yes.
And, it is, or everything comes with risk. Maybe it's not going to be approved and maybe you're not going to attract the tenants you envisioned, but with the right advice, you should get it right 90% of the time.
Love it. Goes into this one I heard the other day. You'll love this one. Life's not about like I got it from that Rich Dad, Poor Dad book, and poor man's mentality is, I don't take risk, whereas a wealthy man's or woman's mentality, the mindset's more around how can I manage risk?
Yes.
Like life's not around not taking risk and being fearful. It's, hey, the most successful in life do take risk, but it's around managing the risk. And what I'm hearing here is there's some big rewards, but there is bigger risks, but it seems like the savvy commercial buyers they're good at managing their risk.
Yeah. 100%, and it's I think it's not for everybody taking that, obviously,
100%.
but I think a good property manager and a good agent should be giving you that advice constantly, and I think that's where as agents we build our relationships. Is a lot of people aren't even aware that what's happening along the light rail route and what zoning is changing, and before they go and commit to a 5-year lease with options with their current tenant, should they be having a look at the big picture? Should we give them advice? So have you considered a demolition clause? Do you know that you might get an 8-story height limit? Locking yourself into 15 years is going to prohibit you from unlocking that value. So, it comes into just this multidiscipline knowledge that you need to have.
Lastly, on the commercial side of things, asset types, where would you rank maybe the top 3 from your opinion? Everyone would have different opinions, I'm sure, but what's your opinion in you're being very experienced in this game in terms of the asset industry type? Which ones do you feel are sort of safer or the strongest performing in 2023?
I'd have to say quite firmly industrial.
Yeah, okay,
because we've got a supply and demand gap in that sector.
Interesting.
You've also got just very low risk factor, very hard for something to go wrong in a concrete block with a colour bond roof.
True.
So you don't have all of those external risks, and you've got a very broad range of tenants you can attract.
True.
So I'd say industrial, medical is going to always be a top performing.
Yep.
And then anything educational based is, in my opinion, is going to be something that's key, because I think there's a big shift. So it's sort of understanding what what shifts are we having in
the world,
general industries, and I think
Yep.
that education's a big one. And I'd hate using COVID as referring to COVID as around anything really, but if you have a look at the shift of our mentality and the study away from the ability to study away, and this new norm on studying from home and being off campus has made a huge opportunity for private colleges and private education facilities as well.
As in like a hub kind of. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So just like more privatization or in the educational field.
Yeah. Interesting. And what do you think's most risky at the moment? Or just do more due diligence on?
Well, you more due diligence on retail and commercial, because I think that
Yep.
a lot of retail centres are aged, and you should be looking at them not on what's there, but you should be looking at them, as we've already discussed, on that opportunity to get the right tenancy mix and ensure that you're putting tenants in there that are going to be long-term investing in their business, and just I refer to it as a repositioning asset. Is any retail centre is an opportunity to reposition.
Interesting, yeah. The absolute gold in that commercial side of things, and as I said, I'm being a bit biased here and soaking a lot of that for myself. So thanks for sharing. It obviously shows so much experience in that commercial space. I really wanted to touch on, Adam, lastly, around the mental health side of real estate, because this is something me and you have spoken off camera before, and I really liked your values and your alignment on it. And mate, you've come in with the polo. You obviously look after yourself. The veins and the biceps are popping out. So you do treat health and fitness and wellness, I can tell, at the top. You're a high performer in the industry. Mate, where does that come from, and what's your, I guess, advice in that realm of things with, juggling high performance in a really tough environment, as we both know, but also looking after your health and wellness? Yeah,
I think in real estate you've probably got two opportunities for people to, off the rails, wrong terminology, but to become maybe unhappy with life. You're early on in real estate, you don't have a high volume of work generally, and that means that when you're relying on sales, your wins give you a very big high and your losses give you a very big low. And so I think for your first couple of years, that journey of being able to manage that is probably one of the biggest, I would say, all-round industry issues. And that's where a lot of people leave the industry. A lot of the people maybe create very unhealthy habits to counter that.
Factor that, yeah.
So I think that's your first step is learning how to manage your highs and lows, because if you don't, I always come back to, you're representing a client, and if you really need that commission, and that's what your mentality is, are you acting their best interest when you're giving advice? Are you acting their best interest when you're dealing with the buyer? Because it's that commission breath syndrome.
Yes.
But I think that then correlates to those big losses, big wins, big losses, because you're just chasing. It's a commission only job, right? So you're chasing it, and I see that a lot with early on real estate careers, or early. It's probably the majority of our industry really that don't have that reliant turnover.
Yes.
And so they need to manage that very well.
Yeah.
I see that as one big derailing factor. And then you've got your, I think in your high performance category, you've just got, when you do have such a high volume.
Business is coming in.
Yeah,
Yep.
it's managing your emotions. You're dealing with, 7 listings, every listing, or times, say, in our world, that could be 700 buyers. If something's going wrong, you don't have time to reset. It's, you need to treat every phone call, every vendor's meeting with fresh. So if you've gone through or just come out of 3 auctions that didn't sell, you need to make sure that you're walking into the listing presentation that afternoon with a positive mindset, and you need to be able to leave those emotions out. So just not have these emotional waves when it's happening. So if everything's happening so quick, you need to just be able to calm yourself. And it's, Michael Koloshi at our office is a big advocate for just good mental health, and his best tip is look after your mind and your body. Your business looks after itself. So making sure that you've got that appropriate balance, because you've got to work hard, but make time to exercise and stay fit. And I think that then makes you eat well, and it just makes you also just be able to be a lot
balance
calmer.
it all out. Yeah. I love what you said there. I've never thought about it that way, like the two transition points in this industry. Yeah, you're exact. I can definitely relate to that. It's when you're starting, hey, you're in that fight or flight mode. You've got a sniff of a listing or a buy you can help, and then it doesn't go through, and then you've got the lows and the highs. I see that so much. You're exactly right.
Yeah, and that's where you have to. That's we're very fortunate at Koloshi. We have an in-house health coach, holistic coach is the right way to do it, and we do. It's not mandatory, but you see her once a week, and it's an opportunity to just reflect on how you could have dealt with that issue again differently. And that made a big difference in my career, because you've just got like a little hour slot a week where you reset, and you see the bigger picture a lot of the time, and you don't have those massive lows.
Yeah.
So we're very fortunate to have that resource, but there's other ways you can do it.
Yeah. Sounds like a key tip there for anyone in this industry or any industry that has dealing with big highs and big lows, is to be able to stay centered, is what I'm hearing. Is that right?
Yeah, and I think that comes through your lifestyle. I think that comes through eating well, making sure that you're keeping some form of fitness. You don't have to be.
Yeah.
You can just walk. You don't have to go to gym. But just making sure that the way I do it, I start every single day doing that. So then I've set my day up perfectly. Yeah.
Yeah. So you sort of you're taking care of you before your business, because it sounds like the better you are, the more you'll be able to react and be proactive in that business. Is that right?
Yeah, I think 100%. I think in real estate, people can get caught when they're busy very much into the cycle where work becomes everything.
Yes.
And I think then, when you've got bad sleep, you're not eating well because you're not prepared, and you're not exercising. I always refer to, are you acting in the best interest of your clients? Are you turning up with the right attitude and dealing with their inquiries appropriately? And so your vendor deserves you to be fresh every single morning.
Yeah.
And I think that just creates habits and routine.
Yeah, yeah. And I agree with you 100%. I always have that mentality, like, if I can't look after me, how can I look after, 10 clients, and bring the best version of myself every day, right? So, mate, give us an insight. What's your morning look like generally?
So 4:30 to 5 o'clock rise.
Yeah.
Just around the corner, I go to it's called the Body Mind Factory. So it's a gym, but it's mindset coach as well.
Unreal.
And so it's like a combination of the two, and that's every day. And then every morning till 7, walk the dog, eat, work by 8 o'clock, and I generally am in the office till about 7 every night. So and that's just rinse repeat. Yeah.
And what's when you step into the office? So you've done your morning routine, you're primed up. What's sort of the first key activities for you as a high performance agent, you think?
Morning whip with the team, because we've got a team of 4. So
work in progress, is that what that stands for?
Yeah, so just or around the grounds, I think some people call it, but it's what are we working on? What's the key things to achieve today? And keep it short and sharp to 15 minutes.
Yep.
And then it will flow on to, then I open my inbox.
Okay.
Because in the past, if you open your inbox before, you're not present for your whip, and you just get distracted.
Like it.
You start taking phone calls, and no one's got direction, and we still fall into that trap when we're busy. But if you can be disciplined to spending 15 minutes to set your day up, there's a lot less work anxiety, I would call it, or franticness, because at least for the next few hours, everyone knows what they're doing.
Love it. Heard this one the other day. You'll love it. Are you in prepare or repair mode?
Yeah.
And people start their day checking out the inbox and they're straight away in that reactive mindset. So they're repairing things, putting out fires, and all of a sudden that energy is channeling into their mind, and that you're right, they're not present. So I heard one, and this is what I've translated in my business, sounds like you do too, is preparing the day first, making sure blocking out all the noise and the things that need repairing, and being proactive rather than reactive first thing in the morning. So that's a really, really good tip. What about in terms of, you've obviously been around this industry a while. What about in the mental health side? Is there anything you do? Do you meditate, or what do you like listening to different sort of things to protect your mental health in this tough game?
Yeah, well, never before, but through the coach we've got at the office, I've learnt a lot through then, and I wouldn't say I've got the patience to meditate, but I think I would have the knowledge now on how to breathe, to reset, and that's a big thing. Breath work is a huge thing. Basically, that's my version of meditation anyway. Yeah. And so it's also, big thing is giving yourself an opportunity to handle the issue once you're grounded, rather than dealing with things on the spot when you might be frustrated, uptight, and you've only got one opportunity to sort of problem out. And, sometimes it doesn't even have to be that day. Even if it's a major issue, maybe you need to sleep on it. Maybe someone's become really upset, or there's a misunderstanding on how you've dealt with something. To repair it, you need to repair it in a smooth, calm state of mind, not when you've got a opinion and you want to get it across straight away, because
your heightened state as well.
Because we get spoken to really badly in a lot of instances in real estate, because we've got a big industry, and unfortunately, sometimes people's dealings with a certain percent of them has given them a perception, and so you just and again, you have to deal with that. Either way, you get spoken to a lot of the time, but I've said it maybe too many times, but we work for someone else, and they deserve us
to be the best.
To be the best, version, irrespective of how we get treated or spoken to. Yeah. Not so much in the category of property I sell, but in a lot of the early days, there was a big perception on agents, and people didn't want to speak to them, and so handling that was something I had to learn and juggle a lot.
I'm just soaking in. I'm really passionate about this side of things. So, mate, my key takeaways, what I'm hearing there for anyone listening. First one I'm hearing is be aware of the highs and the lows of the industry and the industry you're in, and realise you've got to maintain, a centered sort of mindset. You've got to do things that allow you to be able to stay centered in this industry. Yeah. Sort of the one thing. The other one I heard is around, I'm feeling like regulating your emotions. I hear you say there, like, you're so right. Like, you'll get someone say something and they'll send you in a certain state of heightened state, and you want to react in that state. What I'm hearing you say is you kind of want to regulate first and then make a conscious effort, more from a balanced state of being, before you respond in a heightened state. Because you're right, some people, I've heard, this agent did this or whatever, and it's probably they're reacting in a heightened state, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. And mate, lastly, on the mental health side of things, what's I guess your overarching tip, to stay, at a high level? You still want that competitive hunger, you still want to operate at those high levels, but you also want to keep that balanced attitude, which I know you have. Even talking to you, you got a nice sort of centered tone. What do you think the biggest overarching tip is to people who are in a high performance environment but want to take care of their mental health?
I think, there's a lot of, everyone's different. I guess everybody's different. What my view is that I try my best, number one, not to get caught up with rewarding myself too much materialistically. I think that is an error that in early success of real estate people fall into, and it's almost setting a false sense of life and a false expectation for yourself that you should be driving that car, you should be wearing those brands.
Yes.
And that's no disrespect to anybody, because I fall into the trap sometimes, but I try and ensure that it doesn't become
the reason why.
I'm doing things.
Love it.
I wouldn't look to supplement stress with substances.
Yes.
And, I know that sometimes you've had a tough week, and going to the bar might be a solution for people. I 2 years ago decided to stop drinking altogether.
Yeah.
It's the gateway to rolling yourself into. I just don't think it helps you improve if you are struggling with the highs and lows of real estate. Is that using a filler?
Yeah, it's nearly like a Band-Aid, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. And you can easily replace that with fitness. So I believe is a really good answer to dealing with as a stress mechanism or coping mechanism.
Scientifically proven as well.
And I think the other one is is just to keep going back to the be humble. Being humble is probably the actual answer. Is that I just think that we fall into a trap. Well, we as in the real estate industry falls into the trap of wanting social proof that isn't real.
Like external validation.
Yes,
right?
yeah, and organically, a lot of agents, the only people that follow each other are competitors and friends, and I think that I guess we're not talking about the high performing, but in a general consensus is not to live your life through a facade, because it's all about being genuine. I think in our industry, and to remain genuine.
Yeah, I love it. Before we finish, I just want to touch on that because that's a key one, like the happiness factor as well, right? Like, because I know some agents, male and female in this industry, that from their facade look like success, what society deems as success, right? But I know well and truly there's substance, there's relationship issues, there's health issues as well. Mate, what's your sort of take on that? Like, is that I guess, is it like a false facade for people from the outside looking in that just because you're successful in real estate in terms of listings and GCI does not equate to happiness?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I'm maybe different to other people, but I think that there's multiple pillars. I think career success is an element of happiness, because I think that you need to strive and achieve for something, but then you've got your family pillar, which is equally as important, and your final pillar, is it spirituality? Is it something outside of work? You in my opinion, you need three pillars that need to be given attention all the time. So if you've just got one pillar, when it falls, you fall harder. If you've got three pillars that you focused on and you feel very passionate and successful in achieving, if one pillar falls, you've still got two. So it's something that I learned through one of my mentors, is to always have three pillars that you maintain and grow. It doesn't matter what they are. I think family should always be one, in my opinion. But if you've got three pillars that you always grow, when one goes bad, you've got two, but you've still got two to fall on, and then you avoid these highs and lows. I mean, high-performing agents, their highs and lows, although they may not necessarily, they may be in a fortunate position where you don't need your next deal.
Yes.
But when we sold the Voyager last year for 45, and irrespective of what the commission was, should that have not gone to plan, that should be a pretty big low in terms of the opportunity cost that not being successful on that campaign would have been. So it's not always the people that really need that next deal. It's sometimes the people at the very top. When you're dealing with the commissions that you are, it's still a pretty big. You still have to be able to cope with the fact that is there one day and gone the next. Yeah.
Well, mate, I was going to say, what's been your highest? Because I want to ask you a question off the back of this. What's been your highest sort of sale to date, like roughly?
The Voyager was the highest at 40, just over 45.
45 mil, yeah.
And I think closely followed by the shopping centre land in Mermaid for 42.
Yeah. Now here's a backup question: when the GCI, you did the deal and whatnot, the happiness factor, like obviously you got the result and those sorts of things, but I'm assuming you would have been, you would have celebrated or whatever, but you're kind of on to the next deal, right? Like explain to me those sorts of big deals for people who are trying to. I know people strive to, I want the big deal, I want the, where's that happiness like compared to, you say your pillars, like family, you know.
Yeah, I get no. To be honest, I think in my first few years, the smallest deals gave me the biggest happiness. It's hard maybe to articulate it. I think that moment of selling that property, the thought process wasn't actually about what we may may have made. It was, all right, how do we capitalize on this opportunity, and how we so all of a sudden that's the happiness was how are we going to make sure that we make the most of that result to further push ourselves. So I think the attention sort of moved. I think that's where...
It's funny, isn't it? Yeah, because people think when they get that listing or when they get that sale, they're going to all of a sudden be happy. You know, like...
yeah, and I think for the first few maybe you are, but it's then, you know, there are case studies, and, you know, I would never ever mention names where people do, and they do a massive deal, but they're gone for 2 or 3 weeks doing whatever to reward themselves, and it's like, you know, I've maybe got a bit of a different perception as well. You've just lost the best opportunity to tell
100%.
You know, the market, and use that opportunity as quick as you can. And what often happens is another agent then takes that opportunity to tell his clients about the sale.
Yeah.
So
no, mate, I'm sure there's going to be people listening, and that was the real goal of this one. I want it to really sink in, because I can tell you right now, I know a lot of people, not only this industry, but in a high performance where there's big money, big highs, big lows, that they get the highs, they get the money come in. I can tell you what, that gratification is very small compared to the whole life having those pillars in check. And I can tell you right now, a lot of them are using it to band-aid, you know, the things that aren't balanced in life, away from work.
Yes, yeah.
You know, their health might be off, their family troubles, like a lot of those things I feel you can't really band-aid those things with money.
No, and I think one will directly affect the other.
100%.
I think if an unhappy home life comes into the office, I think the way you speak, look, and address someone is going to affect that pillar. And then, you know, if your health is bad, I think in our game, having good health is key.
It's key.
Yeah,
balance.
Because where do you get the energy from to work to 8 o'clock at night?
Yeah.
Every night.
Yeah.
And constantly without having fatigue. And I'm not saying that I haven't had all of that. I think I've, over the last 2 years with the 3 mentors I've had, I think I've been able to address a lot of those to make sure that I avoided them.
You keep it. Yeah, I love it. So it sounds like key thing, if you listen to this right now, awareness, having awareness where you are right now, having a look at like Adam's takeaway on pillars. Yeah. You know, there's more to life than your career pillar, that's for sure. And being mindful of when you deregulate or when you're feeling, or is there any band-aids in your life outside of work that need, you know, are you using your professional facade to band-aid, you know, what else is going on? So, mate, I really wanted to touch on that. It's funny, I'll finish on, I heard Mark Boris, you know Mark Boris? Yeah, one of the most successful businessmen in Australia, and he's big on this sort of stuff and burnout and stuff. The older he's gotten, and when he was younger, he sold Wizard home loans for, it was ridiculous amount. I don't know, ridiculous amount. And the money got wired in his account, and they asked him what he did, and he got a pizza, and he was in New York, and he's like, all right, I'm just on to making my next business. Like he said he didn't feel, maybe for like 10 minutes, he felt, oh, that's cool. But he just had a pizza in New York, and then was on to the next, like he felt like he needed to chase the next thing, right? So that's what he was, it's always stuck with me. It's like no amount of money can really, you know, validate you or anything. It's just kind of like it always seems as though the other pillars in life, you got to have it all sort of balanced, right? So you heard it here first from one of the highest performers in his field around the importance of balancing, being aware of burnout and things like that as well, right? Yeah. That's something we spoke off camera around as well. Like a lot of people in this industry, I feel, are burnt out. They can't keep up the pace, and they're just running around the rat race, right?
Yeah, and they probably don't know how to identify it in the early stages, and it will just snowball.
It does, hey, yeah. Geez, I've nearly come to them a few times, I can tell you what. But it's awareness, right? You gotta be aware of it.
Yes, yeah.
Awesome, mate. Unreal. I just got to acknowledge, loving the. Obviously a high performer. I love anyone who's in high performance industries to just see what the habits are. And I love that you balance it as well. I'm very aligned with that in my life as well around, health, your wellness, your family life, all very important to have a good business. So that was probably my biggest key takeaway, and also around the commercial assets as well. Like your knowledge and acumen in that space is unreal, mate. So thanks for sharing your knowledge on the show, mate.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Awesome, mate. And what I'll finish on is we do a quick fast five. So first thing that comes to mind, right? Any dwelling type, any location in the world. So be as creative as you want. And just for you, we can include commercial if you want.
Okay.
Mate, first one is holiday home. Where would the holiday home be? Anywhere in the world?
Miami in America.
Oh, Miami.
Yeah.
Yeah, true. What are we talking? Like a little unit, villa on the beach?
Something close to the beach.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
have you been there?
Yeah, once, and I love it. Yeah.
Is it similar to the coast? Or?
It's the coast on steroids.
Is it?
Yeah, it's just a bigger version of the Gold Coast.
Yeah, okay. I've heard of Miami. Hey, it goes good there. Okay. What about Bucks party? Where'd you have the Bucks party at?
Paintballing.
Paintball? Yeah, okay. No, you gotta have a house. Yeah, dwelling type.
Penthouse.
Yeah. Whereabouts?
Broad Beach.
Oh,
yeah, definitely not surfers.
Love it.
Yeah.
Oh, it's funny. We had someone from Sydney on, and he hasn't been to the coast in ages, and he was telling me around. And no disrespect, I still love surf. It's come a long way, actually. It's come a long way, but he only knows surfers because that's all he grew up, and he's just like, I couldn't believe like Broad Beach is so like that's where I was like I didn't even know about that suburb. A few minutes down. So yeah, it's funny, isn't it, mate? What about blue chip sort of cash flow dwelling? Whereabouts in the world, and what asset type?
I think we'll just go centre Sydney CBD, retail and commercial.
Just
a safe bet, yeah. Something in Sydney CBD.
Really?
Yeah.
Is that because a lot of foot traffic?
Yeah, I think it's just historically they've sold at the sharpest yields, and without knowing the Sydney market, it must illustrate that's
yeah.
If everybody wants it, then it must be well performing and low turnover of vacancies.
It would be too, yeah, good option. And mate, what about the forever home for you and your future family? Where's that?
Mermaid Beach, Gold Coast.
Yeah?
Yeah. I wouldn't leave the Gold Coast.
You like Mermaid? What is it about Mermaid Beach for you?
I just think it's the lifestyle and the I just think it's the lifestyle.
Yeah. It's a good vibe, isn't it?
Yeah.
You'd be shirt off along the Esplanade, wouldn't you?
Yeah, when it's good lighting.
Yeah, when it's done a few reps, mate. Yeah, North Burleigh Hill. And mate, last question. What's your biggest? I guess if 2023, you're a buyer, resi or commercial. What do you think the best tip is to them leading into this year?
Patience.
Yeah.
I don't think you necessarily need to jump. If you're looking at investment, I think this is the year of patience because you will have opportunities, and just be thorough and do your due diligence, and there's going to be very good opportunities this year.
I love it. Yeah. Mate, that was absolute fire to finish. Though, mate, I'm with you. I've been saying it to that many people, like just sharpen the saw now. Because there's going to be opportunities. Be patient.
And be ready.
Yeah, have the shot. Because when it pops up, you want to make sure that deal's off the table because there will be some, won't there?
Yeah. The biggest thing, and I know we've gone over time, but if the right opportunity comes and you're not in a position to make a strong, quick offer with strong deposit and good settlement terms, someone else will be. And that, unfortunately, as an agent, our recommendation is always going to be the offer with the most certainty.
Love it.
Yeah.
Love it. Bit of fire to finish, mate. Thanks for coming on, legend.
Thanks, guys.